Hello everyone and welcome to Merlin's Manor. Today I'm going to be going over my top 10 dice games. Now this is going to be focusing on the dice mechanic itself and how much I like the actual mechanic. And so some games that may be higher up on my overall list might be lower on this list because the mechanic itself doesn't shine as much as the other games, and so it's not going to be taking into account as much the rest of the game, but the actual dice mechanic itself. So let's jump right on in and get into the list with my number 10 pick, which is actually going to be a little bit of a cheat because there's two games I really couldn't differentiate between which one I wanted on the list. And so it's going to be Tiny Epic Galaxies and Space Base. I enjoy both of these games for their dice rolling. In Tiny Epic Galaxies, you are going to have some custom dice that look like this. They have different symbols on them. And you're going to be rolling some of these on your turn, and you're going to be able to use them to do different things. Some of them give you energy that can be spent later on for different things. Some give you culture that can be spent. Some will help you with upgrades, with traveling, different things. And once per turn, you can re-roll any dice you didn't want to use to try and get something better. And then after that, you have to spend an energy in order to do that. Another neat thing about this game is that when it's not your turn, you can use any culture that you've built up to then be able to follow an action that somebody else is doing. And so it keeps you involved in between turns. You can use somebody else's dice that they have rolled by spending a culture. And so that's kind of neat there that you are still active in between turns. And that same kind of idea is involved with Space Base. In Space Base, you are getting different components that are going to give you benefits whenever certain numbers are rolled, both on your turn and on other players' turns. And so you're being involved as well in between turns in that game. And you're basically going to either take the sum of those dice that are rolled or one of each dice to do two different actions. And so you're going to be able to do something on your turn and then also something on other players' turns. So I really enjoy how both these games keep you involved during other players' turns. So that was my number 10 pick, Tiny Epic Galaxies and Space Base. Now for number 9 is going to be Doctor Who, Time of the Daleks. And this is a game where you are having some custom dice. And here are my dice for this. And you're going to be rolling these dice to try and get different symbols. And you're going to be able to create a dice pool before you go into a battle. And you're trying to get different symbols. You may want to get a run symbol, a fist symbol, and a science symbol, for instance. And actually, I think there's usually more than just 3, but that's just an idea of what you'll be trying to get. And there's different things that you can use to mitigate your dice rolls as far as if you don't get what you want, sometimes you can re-roll certain colors. Sometimes you can change a certain color to a certain symbol. And these are going to come in play by different allies that you get, different companions that you get are going to help you out in different ways, as well as the different doctors have their own kind of powers and stuff. And so there's a lot of different dice mitigation along the way as you're trying to get these different symbols. Number 8 is Red Cathedral. And Red Cathedral, you are doing kind of a rondel type system here. And so you're going to have dice that have been rolled, and then you are allowed to move that dice the amount of numbers on the pips there. And when you land on a certain place, you're going to be able to get a resource there or take an action there. And so enjoy that rondel system, the way it works. If it's your own color or the white color, you can then also spend to be able to move it further. And so, but if it's any other dice, you can only move it the amount that's on there. And so you have to try and decide which dice you're going to move, and if you're going to be, if that's the benefit that you want to get there. If there's already a dice there, then you can go ahead and get double the amount of resources. And so I really enjoy the way the rondel system works with those dice. That's my number 8. My number 7 is Zombicide. And Zombicide, you have 3 actions that you can do on your turn, and then part of the way you use the dice is in your fighting of the zombies. And you have different weapons that you can acquire along the way that will help you to be able to defeat the zombies. They have the amount of number that you have to roll in order to defeat a zombie, as well as how many dice you're allowed to roll based on that weapon. And so it's really kind of cool to be able to go up against all these different hordes of zombies with different weapons that you've acquired along the way and trying to defeat them and hoping that you roll the right numbers that you need and hoping that you don't get caught in with a bunch of zombies. And if you are doing a ranged attack, you have to be careful that you don't hit your friends. There are some abilities that give you the sniper ability where you can actually kind of just only hit what you want to hit. But if you don't have that and you don't make a hit on the zombies, then you have to attack your friends. You accidentally hit them. And so you want to try and make sure that you are not rolling into areas where your allies are unless you are pretty sure you're going to be able to make the hits. So I enjoy Zombicide and the way it uses dice to fight the zombies off. My number 6 game is Final Girl. And Final Girl, you are using your dice to move around, to attack, to do all kinds of different things. And you are trying to roll a 5 or a 6 for it to succeed. But there's also some mitigation. If you roll a 3 or a 4, you can get rid of 2 cards in order to make the success happen. And you're trying to get multiple successes oftentimes, but you only have a limited amount of dice to do it with. You get more dice the lower the horror goes down, but you also lose dice if the horror goes all the way up. And so you want to kind of keep the horror level down so you can get more dice, as well as there's other things that sometimes give you some extra dice. And there's a lot of great mitigation throughout the game, both by the discarding of cards as well as different other items that can help you mitigate. And I just really enjoy, there's a lot of luck and randomness involved in the game, but there is that mitigation along the way as you are fighting off trying to fight the final killer and trying to find items to help you along the way to make those dice rolls better. I really enjoy the way the dice work out for that. And so, Final Girl. Now to my number 5 is Creature Comforts. And Creature Comforts is a worker placement game that you're going to place out your workers and then you're going to roll dice. Well, you're going to roll 2 dice first off that are your family dice. And so you're going to know what those 2 dice are, but then there's going to be 4 community dice that you have no clue going in what those dice are. And so you're going to hope that you're going to be able to use the spots you placed, because you have to have certain dice at each spot in order to activate that spot. And so you may see that you have a 2 and a 3. And you're like, okay, well, this requires 2 evens. I have half of what I need. Maybe I'll go there and hope that I'm able to get another even die, and that'll work out. But you're not only just worried about one space, you've got 4 different locations that you are trying to hope that you get what you need for. And if you don't get what you need, you can't use that space that round, but you will get a lesson learned token, which will allow you to increase or decrease the number of a die on a later round. And so you kind of take some risks there as far as where you're going. I really enjoy how you don't know exactly if you're going to be able to use the spots or not. And there's a little bit of kind of adjusting which dice go to which place, as well as adjusting those dice for mitigation as you go. I just think it's a really interesting mechanic that they included it in there with that worker placement to kind of give you a little bit of a push your luck as you're trying to make sure you can do all the things that you want to do. So that's my number 5, Creature Comforts. Number 4 is Sagrada. Now Sagrada has some really nice dice. I'm just going to kind of bring some out here to show y'all as they go all over the place. But these dice, just very colorful dice, and you're going to be rolling those. The first player is going to roll those each round, and you are going to then take turns choosing which dice that you are going to draft to be able to put into your stained glass window. And there's certain requirements on there as far as where dice can go. Some places in the window require a certain number. Some places in your window require certain color dice. And so you have to meet those requirements. You also are not allowed to put 2 of the same colors adjacent to one another or 2 of the same numbers adjacent to one another. So when you start out this game, you've got quite a few places you can go. Well, you're going to start in one of the corners and kind of branch out, but you got a lot of options. But as the game kind of closes in towards the end, you have only a certain colors that you can place in situations, certain numbers you can place, and you have to get kind of very creative as far as which ones you're going to take. And sometimes you can't take any of them, and you kind of lose out there, and you get negative points for any places you don't fulfill. You're also trying to fulfill goals by getting certain conditions met. Maybe it's getting a different color dice in all throughout a column, or a different number dice throughout a column or a row. Or you're trying to get sets of 5 and 6 numbered dice, and so whichever ones you're trying to focus on getting a lot more of those in there. You have your personal goal, which is going to be a color dice that's going to give you the number of pips, bonus points at the end. So you might be trying to focus on getting yellow dice more often, trying to get the higher numbers for those yellow dice so they'll count for more points. So there's a lot of interesting, it's a very interesting puzzly type game that uses dice, and so I really enjoy Sagrada. That is my number 4. Now, number 3 is Rolling Realms. And Rolling Realms is a roll and write game that's based in the Stonemaier Games world. You are going to the different realms of the Stonemaier Games, and each one plays a little differently as to what you are trying to get done. And you're going to be rolling 2 dice each round, and you're going to use one of those dice in one of the 3 realms you have, and the other dice in the second one of the 3 realms. And then there's sometimes where you're able to pull in a 3rd dice by using the resources that you're gaining along the way. Sometimes you're able to use them in the same realm because you use pumpkins to kind of make it to where you're allowed to do that. And so there's a lot of interesting choices to make. It's another one of those puzzly type games. There's not a whole lot to the game as far as what you're doing each round. You're just taking those 2 dice and finding a place where you can write that number in. But it's a very difficult challenge to try and make sure that you're getting the most points throughout the game by finding the ideal places to place them. You don't know what's going to come up the next round, next turn, and the turn after that. And you're going to be playing 3 full rounds of 9 rolls, and you're going to be accumulating points each set of games there, each of the 3 rounds, and adding those up, as well as adding up 1/10 of a point for every resource you don't use each round. And whoever has the most points goes ahead and wins after the end of the 3 rounds. And so I think I love the puzzle that's involved in using those dice. Now for number 2. This one's a big one. It's a solo game. And it is Batman: The Dark Knight Returns. And this is a game, if you noticed on my top 10 list, I mentioned that this didn't quite make my top 10 solo games, mainly because of its replayability issues. I found they didn't have a whole lot of replayability, but I wanted it on this list because I really love the dice. I'm going to push this out of my way for a second so I can bring this dice tray over here and show you all these different dice, custom dice that you're going to be using. I really love the Batarang dice that have these Batarang type things going on the side. At first I was concerned that these wouldn't roll well because of that, but they do roll pretty well, and I just love that they're so neat. You've got these D8s that are being used for your enemies, and they each do something a little bit differently. You have your ally dice that you can bring in. There's just so many different dice. That's actually a smoke bomb dice there, but these are some of the ally dice. And so there's so many different things that you have going on with this. You're only allowed to use 3 of your Batarang dice each round, or each roll, as you're fighting against the bad guys or going up against the cops to try and defeat them. And so you only have so many that you're able to roll in that situation, which is 3 plus any ally dice you can kind of add in there. But then some of your more powerful dice, if you go ahead and utilize them, they're going to wind up in the cooldown section, or it kind of varies a little bit depending on what round you're playing and how the cooldown works. Especially the ally dice later on rounds, if you use them in there, they're going to be gone for that turn. And so you need to kind of decide wisely when you're going to use those so that you don't run out of dice that are going to be powerful to help you do what you need to do. You're going to be going up against enemies with these dice for their basic enemies, the red ones being the mutants, the blue ones being the police, and they have their own kind of different symbols on them. Some of them attack you, some of them block you, and some of them just do nothing. And so you're going to be going up against that. Some of them have a special ability that kind of trigger later on in the game. And so I just love the custom dice. I love how the battles work as far as you're trying to defeat them by rolling pals and by rolling pals and rams. And the rams kind of hurt you if you go ahead and use those. And so just a very neat way that they've done the dice there and done the battles. And so I really love Batman: The Dark Knight Returns. My number 1 game, which is another solo game, and that is Under Falling Skies. Now, Under Falling Skies, I really, really love the way the dice are used in this game. It's so unique. And what you're doing here is you're rolling 5 dice, and you're trying to place them in different places to get benefits at the end of the round. But whenever you place them, you're going to move the alien ships that are in that column down that many spaces. And so you may want to use a 6 because it's very powerful for a certain track. Maybe you're using it on your research track to really ramp up that research towards the end game. But you put that 6 there, you're going to have to move that ship down 6 spaces towards you, and you may not like where it's going to land. You may not. It may actually make it go so far down that it takes damage to the planet there. And so you may have to be careful about how often you do that. And there's certain places where you want the ships to land because then you can destroy them with your fight action. And so you're trying to make sure that the enemy ships land there. You don't want them landing on the mothership icon too much because that's going to cause the mothership to come down further and press the mothership winning the game, or the other ships being able to quicker come out and hit you and win the game. Or so you lose the game in that case. And so you want to be careful how you're doing that and trying to mitigate how you're using those. And each round you're not stuck with the 5 dice that as you rolled, because 2 of the dice you can then go ahead and when you place those, you roll all the dice that you haven't used so far. And so you try and decide, do I want the dice that are out there, or do I want to take chances on what might come up early on? Or you might love all the dice, and so you're going to wait until the very end of your placement to place those white dice so you have less re-rolling going on. It's a great puzzle that you're given to solve each time, and there's a lot of ways you can ramp up the difficulty. You can also kind of play it on the very easiest difficulty, but I find very quickly I got into the level 2. You start at level 0 and you can go all the way up to level 4, I believe it is, or there may be some ways that you can make it even harder, I'm not sure. But I mainly played on the level 2 difficulty. And so it's very interesting the way you're going to use those dice. I love the puzzle that it gives you each round. This is a solo game, but I really enjoy it and wanted to be on this list as my #1 dice game as far as the dice mechanic itself goes. I love it. And so these are my top 10 dice games as far as focusing on the dice mechanic themselves. I really enjoy the unique ways that these games use dice, and whether it's being to fight off enemies, whether it's being able to go to different locations, whether it's getting your workers out to be able to use your workers, whether it's being able to get resources, whether it's all kinds of different ways that these games use dice, so many different unique ways. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you try out some of these games. Let me know in the comments down below, what are some of the dice games that you enjoy, and why do you enjoy that game for the dice mechanics that are used in that game? Let me know that in the comments, and let me know what you think of this list, or what do you think of the games I've included. And as always, I hope you have a great week, and I'll catch you in the next video.